Good morning. How are you today on this beautiful Tuesday morning in wonderful Brisbane, Australia? My name's Linda and I'm here to help you with trauma. This morning, before we get going, grab a note paper and pen, whether that note paper is electronic and your finger is the pen, or you need to grab actual note paper and a pen, which is actually better for you cognitively. Grab it now while we get started so that you can take some notes as to what stands out for you. So, we'll hit upon a couple of points along the way and you want to be able to remember it. And with CPtsd, one of the challenging parts is our memory. So if you write down what hits you in the heart, you'll be able to take the information to your therapist, to your trauma recovery coach, and you'll be able to go, I need strategies for this area. So welcome. Hi, Charlene. Welcome and good morning to everybody who's listening live. If you're here, say g'day. It's wonderful to connect with you all, and I'm always more than happy to help with any information you may need. Good morning, Josephine. You've done well to be awake. Well done. First one live. Awesome. So, this morning, I hope you grabbed your coffee before we got here too, because I had to. It's been a bit challenging the last few days because I've been fighting getting a cold, and I'm determined it's not going to win, that's for sure. So let's grab our infographic for today, and it will be up later after I've finished. It will be up so that everyone can have access to it, because along the way I've found that people like to either print it out or have it in their photos, so take a copy of it for their photos on their phone, so they've got access to it to remind themselves what they're actually aiming for. Okay, so 6 essentials for emotional regulation. Now, before we get into emotional regulation, I want to talk to you about what emotional dysregulation is. So when we've experienced childhood trauma, or as they say professionally, childhood adverse experiences, okay, our brain develops differently, and we need to be very aware of this, because too often we give ourselves a hard time and say, well, it's my fault, I could be doing this, could be doing that, and it's not the point. The point is we've got to understand how our brain's reacting and responding to what goes on around us, so that internally we can grab hold of who I am and say, well, no, that's not who I am, I can do this. Now, dysregulation happens when we feel that whatever's happening around us as an adult is overwhelming, and our brain's response is always fear. Now, honestly, sometimes in the past, this could have happened just because on my road to recovery, I had to do the dishes, and the overwhelm comes, the fear comes, and once our brain's having that fear response, our emotions start to dysregulate because of the chemistry reaction in our brain, and all of a sudden we lose all ability to think cognitively, which is our order system, okay? And we go into fight, flight, freeze or fawn, and all the adrenaline rushes to our extremities, ready to be in fight, flight, freeze or fawn, and then we lose time. We absolutely lose time because our prefrontal cortex and our amygdala are not able to communicate when we are in any one of those 4 conditions, okay? And it's not our fault, it's our brain response that's been conditioned and how our brain formed from childhood. The good news is we can do all of this sort of work, and we can get to the point where the overwhelm, we can recognise it and we go, my brain's just having a nuclear reaction. No, kid. It's not nuclear, but it can feel like that at times, like to the mushroom cloud, overwhelm. And we can learn to recognise what's happening, and we can begin to make things manageable. So when the brain goes into fear response, one of the first things we can do when we emotionally dysregulate is go, it's happening, it's okay, whatever I'm facing is going to be manageable, okay, whatever it is. So people who've never experienced adverse childhood experiences, their first response to an overwhelm is, that's manageable. Their prefrontal cortex is engaged, and so they go, right, that's manageable. How do I break it down? What do I do? What are the next steps? And on they go. It's, for them, they've never experienced their brain going offline, literally, and not being able to have control of their body, of the situation, and so much more. So, in order to have emotional regulation, now I want you to remember this, it's an internal system. We have to work with our internal system. There's no avoiding it. And I was really thinking about this yesterday too, because order, coming from the prefrontal cortex, I realised that externally, so as a mum, I'm able to order, and I don't mean in the bossy manner, although being a first child, people have told me I'm bossy, and I am, and I don't mean to be, it's just that I can see what's needed, and I don't stop and think, and I go, oh, well that, right? So you will find that externally, you have this great ability and insight to see order all around you, or what other people need, or even you can see where things need to go in an order. So I would never, ever, ever have guessed that for me, internally, I needed to learn order. Okay, so can you see the two different things? Is that externally, and I saw this not just in motherhood, but when I did normal office work. Okay, so when I did office work, I did bookkeeping, and it was a good job for me because it had order. It had order and it had time frames. So when you do bookkeeping for a big company, it's all run on a schedule. And that was good for me because if I got overwhelmed internally, which I didn't even know, we had no language back then, I could always go back to focusing on what's the next thing, what's the order, okay? But the first thing we need to do internally is learn to recognise the signs of our own panic. So when is it feeling overwhelming, and is this the first sign? What does it feel like for me? And yesterday I was actually able to put language around it for me, because I want to go on to do consulting for businesses with this information, hopefully to help people catch this before they, like me, end up bedridden and medically mismanaged for 2.5 years and just lose your whole brain system. And I can say that with a laugh now because it's been a long road, but it was a hard road and I wouldn't want it for anybody else. But in order to do this, we've got to learn to recognise when we do feel overwhelmed. So yesterday I went, right, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, and I could feel the overwhelm happening internally, and I went, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden the light went on in my brain and I went, I don't have to be afraid because I know who I am. I know that I'm capable of breaking things down into manageable bite-sized chunks. So if you're out with your kids one day, or you're out with friends and the overwhelm happens, you can say to yourself, well, no, I know what to do in this situation. I know that this is the next step and the next step, and that's the order that I need to keep going forward and to help my body emotionally regulate, or my brain emotionally regulate, and get back on track, okay? So, and be responsible to figure out what you're feeling afraid of. So for me, yesterday, I was afraid that, actually, what was I afraid of? I was afraid, well, my biggest thing, because of the perfectionism that arises out of childhood abuse, is I'm afraid of getting things wrong, okay? It is very, very overwhelming in me. I'm afraid of getting things wrong. So when you work out what your, button is, that when you're afraid, and my other thing too is I'm always afraid of I've always been afraid of hurting other people, always. And that's not a good thing to be afraid of, because we can isolate too much with that. So when we take responsibility, we can then say, right, now I can take control of my internal world so that my brain stops choosing to go offline in moments when I'm being creative, in moments when I'm participating with my kids, in moments when I'm having insight into my job and where I want to go, okay? Whatever it is, you'll find that exact button for you and go, right, no, I don't have to go offline anymore. We still will, because our brain's been conditioned that way. But it's how we teach ourselves to respond to it and be responsible for that response that makes our life get back online, okay? Now, one of the things I learnt to do in the early days was when I was feeling overwhelmed and not sure of where to go, the emotional state, okay, is to check the facts. So I asked myself, I taught myself to ask these questions. Is this true, or am I having an emotional reaction? Now, our emotions are important, okay? From our heart, if they're driven from our heart, they give us the passion to pursue life. If the emotional dysregulation is coming from a chemical reaction from our brain, then those are the emotions that we need to question, okay? At those times in overwhelm, we need to say, is this really my reality today? Do I really need to be afraid? Okay, is there something here that's threatening my very life, and do I need to be afraid? And I have to be willing to ask myself that question. At first it can feel a bit odd, like, why am I asking myself this question because I'm an adult? But then we go, at some point I was a child who was overwhelmed, and I need to honour and respect my process. At the moment I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, so I want to work it through and find out which bits are manageable for me and which bits I need to hand back to other people to be responsible for. That's a big thing, okay? So we also want to sell ourselves on a positive outcome, even if it's unknown. So one of the big things for me was when I had to leave a marriage, okay? And I had to sell myself on a positive outcome, because the last thing anybody wants to do is leave a marriage, okay? It's not why we get married. And because I could see that I had to leave, I had to sell myself on a positive outcome. And long term, there are positive outcomes. For where I'm going in my life now, I have to sell myself on a positive outcome because it helps break everything down into manageable bite-sized chunks. Part of it is having faith in ourselves that we can do this. We can seek the answers where we need to seek them. I was just talking to Nick about this actually, is that we've got to be willing to look at the internal system in order that we uncover the answers that suit us as a person, okay? So over the years, multiple, I came to understand that even though I had a vision in my head of what a traditional housewife would look like and how she would behave and what she does and her role, okay, I actually came to understand through experience that I would never be like that picture that I had, all right? So we have to begin to feel comfortable of exploring what is my role. what positive outcome do I need to sell myself on in order that I can change the image that I've got in my head, and have faith that everything will work out, okay? Even though there's lots of unknowns, I can take the one next step and make it work for me, okay? Now, I do understand that if somebody's listening and they haven't had trauma, this can sound like very self-orientated and very selfish, but that's not the space we're coming from, okay? We're coming from the space that we never got, we were never parented in a manner that allowed for what happened to us as children, or in a manner that identified the impact of trauma on our lives. So the self that we're looking at is our internal system. It's not our ego. It is our internal system, and we need to know our internal system. We need to know how we personally process things. So how I process something will not be how you process something, and it won't be in the time frame. It will all look different. And that's where complex PTSD is complex, because we are all different internally in how we process things, okay? And that's okay. That's a good thing. That's our uniqueness. But the self that we talk about is our internal system, okay? Not ego. There's a big difference. Big difference. Make a decision and tackle each fear through action. So for me, my actions now are teaching myself what order looks like for me. So what order looks like for my kids and the environment around me is different to what the order internally for me looks like, in order that I don't trigger overwhelm, not that we've got a choice, in order that my brain stays off overwhelm and I get to regulate my emotions a lot more. It does take work. It does take effort. It does take energy. But the thing is, when we do this work, we rewire our brain. You know, our brains are plastic. So as we rewire, the triggers happen less and less. Okay. So let's just make a decision and tackle each fear through action. So as we recognise it, we can take actions. And the thing is, we've got to determine what action we want to take. And it's all new. So again, be careful of the overwhelm. All right. Now, one of the best things that we can do is have an individual or a group that we can be accountable with. All right. And the reason that this is necessary with emotional regulation is that as we get in and it engages the social part of our brain, which is necessary for a healthy life, okay? So as we engage with other people, it helps us and our brain really begin to feel more comfortable with interacting where we're at. So I have a group that runs. If you want to join, feel welcome. There will be a link up later. And also join another group where you like the activity. So one member in our group actually has taken up knitting and going to groups and knitting with other people, and is finding it so beneficial. All right? So if you can find one thing that you'd like to enjoy with other people, then do it. Okay, there's a page on the web called Meetups, and all around the world you can go and meet up with other people who do like-minded things. So one lady's doing meetups for knitting groups. Another person's doing meetups for social activities. We've got to be willing to get out and do this type of thing. Okay, if you have any questions today, hit me up down below. I will get this video fixed and sorted so that you can put it all. We can have it all in one spot and put it together, and we'll go from there. It's been wonderful sharing this time with you this morning. Thanks for tuning in, girls. Great to see you. And I will come back tomorrow morning, same time, same bat channel. And remember, we're the turtles, okay? Slow and steady wins the race. The hare didn't win the race. Slow and steady, turtles won the race. And we are going to win this recovery race so that we can have our life, okay, the life we were designed to live, and keep moving forward from there. All right, blessings and dreams, and I will see you in the morning. Bye for now.